Well, good afternoon to all of you who are online, and welcome to our, our webinar and discussion today. My name is Denny Brennan. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Health Data Consortium, and I am extremely pleased to welcome leaders of 3analytics today who are going to talk to us about understanding vaccine safety concerns, allaying some of the risk that people fear is associated with vaccines and their effects, but also an approach that is designed to be global. What we have in COVID-19 and the vaccines that are currently in production and in use is a global problem. It's not a problem for a particular country or a particular region or a particular community. It's a global problem. Just by way of rules of order, we welcome your questions anytime over the course of the presentation if you type them into the chat box. Because what we're going to do today is we're going to take 3 pauses over the course of the discussion to answer questions. So that will be a time where you can unmute your mic and ask questions directly, or the questions that you have put into the chat box up to that time will be answered. So that way we can attend to all the questions that people have, but we won't interrupt the flow of the presentation. Additionally, and what's important is we welcome your involvement and engagement with MHDC. If we can go to the next page, Lynn, on the landing page. We cover a bunch. This is my pitch for MHDC. So excuse this promotion, but we are all in the business of being in business in some respects. But the Massachusetts Health Data Consortium, we've been around for a long time. We've been around for 43, going on 44 years. We're the oldest organization of our kind in the country. And we are unique in that we convene payers and providers and community members to implement after designing and discussing interoperability and data sharing. Our data governance collaborative is currently working to advance the interoperability guidelines from CMS and ONC with 3/4 of the health plans in the state and more to come, and a good number of providers. The idea being that ultimately we have a patient-centered health data system, and to get there, we have a lot of work to do. We also merged recently with NEHEN. Many of you might know NEHEN, the New England Healthcare Exchange Network. It's one of the only community managed and governed health information exchanges in the country, and one that works for payers and providers in that capacity. That's unique. And lastly, we provide analytic services. So we'd love you to join us. We have memberships for individuals. We have memberships for small organizations, and we support a sliding scale with respect to the fees we charge for membership. But if you want to join MHDC and see many more webinars like the one we're going to show you today, we encourage you to join. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce our first speaker who will kick us off, and then we will go from there. Dr. Durrani, full name Dr. Durrani Gokul Muranathanam, is a physician and an entrepreneur with extensive expertise in the pharmaceutical and device safety areas. We have a little bit of noise in the background. We might need to mute a microphone. There we go. Excuse us. While Dr. Durrani's journey in understanding and managing vaccine safety has been complicated, he has succeeded with the launch of VC19, an integrated AI platform for COVID vaccine active surveillance. The platform is a culmination of years of work and just available now when the industry and the world needs it the most. So we're extremely excited to share with you his vision and explain why the healthcare community needs to adopt a modern approach to safety and surveillance. And with that, Dr. Durrani, I am going to turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Denny. On behalf of 3analytics, we thank MHDC for providing us this great opportunity to share our vision to this entire world. Also, on behalf of MHDC and 3analytics, we welcome all the participants in the webinar. As Denny mentioned, please feel free to chat your questions. At the same time, we will have a Q&A session after I complete the deck, and then there'll be another session after we have a demo of the mobile app from my colleague Kumar, and then I'll walk you through the analytics platform, and then we can have more Q&A session. Again, thank you all, and as Denny mentioned, in fact, we started off 3analytics with the intention to reduce the death due to adverse drug reactions, and that is our vision. If you look at the FDA website, ADRs are the fourth leading cause of death prior to COVID. And in fact, if we all know, this is a preventable cause of death. And that was the origin of 3analytics. Of course, to give a little bit more background, I kind of tried to do this in some shape or form back in 2015-16. Of course, a very raw approach, I would say. I was new to this country. I was so excited about entrepreneurship, and I just jumped onto it. Unfortunately, ended up with a bunch of learnings. Which is very helpful today, and that has helped us reach to where we are today. And of course, we have many more things to come. So let's jump on to the vaccine platform, which we call it as VC19, and then we can take some questions. Just to warm up the audience again. Many of them might know what these definitions are. So it goes almost the same for drugs or vaccines. In the vaccine world, these are called as adverse events following immunization. In the drug world, they are just called adverse events. So any undesirable event or experience, irrespective of a causal association, it is called an adverse event. And this adverse event needs to be reported to the manufacturer, to the agency, and in this case, to the public health organizations who are involved heavily in this vaccine mass vaccination program, because that is what will help in the risk minimization activities. As we all know, there are a bunch of adverse events of special interest. By and large, in the pharmacovigilance setting, these adverse events of special interest mostly resides in the clinical trial space. So, these are events that needs to be communicated to the sponsor immediately, and they also have to be monitored on an ongoing basis. In terms of the vaccines, there are a bunch of adverse events which have been identified as adverse events of special interest due to some of the experiences that have been reported after approval, which is outside of the clinical trial. There are some cardiovascular events like the acute coronary syndrome, some arrhythmias, myocardial infarction. There are some neurological disorders, hematological disorders, which we all know. And then also there's liver injury, kidney injury, and acute respiratory distress syndrome. The science which actually covers all of these activities, which is detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention, is pharmacovigilance. And pharmacovigilance is not only for vaccine, it goes for drugs, device, cosmetics, material vigilance, veterinary vigilance, and so on. And recently there is some regulations around cannabis as well. And what we are right now working on is the vaccine safety. Again, we all know there are some limitations in the clinical trials, and that's the reason the spontaneous reporting system is in existence. And of course, spontaneous system also has its own limitations. In a clinical trial, once the efficacy is established, post-approval, efficacy is not monitored or there is no surveillance for efficacy. However, safety is monitored throughout the life cycle of the drug or the vaccine because there could be adverse events happening in different populations which have not been studied during the clinical trial. More so in COVID-19, we all know that there is going to be rapid vaccination across the globe, and more than 90 countries do not have a basic infrastructure out of the 195 countries. And also the existing systems are not as robust as they could give a real-time alerts or real-time analytics, and also the need for an active surveillance system. So what did we do differently? So we kind of reached out to Japaigo, and Japaigo is a Johns Hopkins University affiliate who are in the business of, they are a nonprofit organization. They are in the business of public health for the past 40 years, and they serve more than 150 countries. And especially they conduct and they have conducted mass vaccination programs in 30 countries. And right now they have been engaged by COVAX to implement vaccination in approximately 15 countries, and the list may go. So we kind of presented to them our pharmacovigilance story and what we are building as an analytics platform. Japaigo was really excited about it, and then they came on board with us. And they also requested us to build a data collection model. So we kind of started working with them and developed a mobile app, which also has a communication model. So we now become a very unique platform with a combination of a data collection model, a data collection platform, data analytics platform with communication ability. And the communication helps us not only in active surveillance, but also to communicate to the patient health worker or the stakeholders in the vaccine implementation programs to be aware of things that are happening during vaccination. And the focus here is patient safety, and the outcome is to have measures of risk minimization in close to real time or near real time, which we strongly believe will build the confidence in the masses and reduce vaccine hesitancy. As a recognition to this approach, Japaigo also reached out to WHO, stating that there is a platform and why don't WHO take a look at it. While WHO were finding some of the, they were building their active vaccine surveillance and cohort event monitoring protocol, and they were looking for some of the vendors. And we had presented this platform to WHO, and we were also lucky enough to be shortlisted as one of the vendors by WHO as well. So as I said, what we have built, we've kind of covered the end-to-end of surveillance, which is data collection, where there is adverse event reporting and processing. The analytics part, which is the signal detection and assessment, and then the dissemination of the information. These are some of the screens of our mobile app, which Kumar will demonstrate in a bit. And what are the features that we have in terms of the mobile app? So our mobile app, again, there are a lot of applications locally developed by multiple countries, even in the US by multiple states, counties, and also there is something called vSafe. These were designed as a very generic data collection applications, but ours as very targeted data collection. So one of it is we kind of map the patient's history and also any allergic history in specific to the constituents of the different vaccines that are approved so far. We also capture prior disease and also concomitant drugs, because these are very helpful for the analytics, both predictive as well as our causality analytics. We have, and we are, and we will also be building a lot of cohort analytics, which probably, as we are hearing, there could be third dose or year-on-year dose, wherein this data analytics could lead to a personalized vaccine kind of a situation. More importantly, we also have a consent form, which could be digitally obtained as against paper in many countries, including US. During the vaccination, we capture all the vaccine-related details. We also capture the lot number for traceability and also all the details of the facility. So the benefits of this detail of information is because to prevent counterfeit, to prevent medication errors. And of course, post-vaccination, we all know we capture the adverse events. We also conduct active surveillance, and also the communication module is built, is part of the post-vaccination part of the entire application. So what are the different communication modes that we have? We can do SMS, we can create forms, we have built some chatbots for WhatsApp, Telegram, email. We can also have some interactive systems, even to the extent of voice to text feature. We have the option to collect until 6 months. The WHO protocol is right now for 3 months. If somebody wants to know the long-term safety, we could still do that. And our application will support multiple languages as well. So this is our this is a functional architecture of our analytics platform. So we aggregate all the publicly available data, and then we can also consume any data that comes from any local country or state or county. And then we have a layer of harmonization. And on top of it, there are a bunch of analytics that run on this data, both quantitative as well as qualitative, which will help in a generic search. For somebody who wants to look up for a particular case or a particular adverse event, they can do it. The dashboards are very interactive. We also have some risk prediction and all the signal detection, signal evaluation modules. These are some of the screens which I will walk you through. Again, we currently have it in the cloud. We have global data source, data integration, data aggregation. The platform is a do-it-yourself platform, and the dashboards are very interactive and dynamic dashboards. So in terms of
let me interrupt you now for a second. We've got a bunch of questions that are queued up.
Sure.
So the first one is How do you determine if an adverse effect is actually from a vaccine or coincidental? What needs to be reported?
We're gonna take a pause in a few minutes, Janice, to answer all the questions. So I think we've got the pauses set up. So we'll be pausing in just a moment.
Yeah.
Ronnie, keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the implementation is actually two parts. One, the mobile app. It is right now available in the Play Store. In a couple of weeks, it will be available in the App Store as well. So we have both versions, Android and iOS. And our analytics platform we built it as a SaaS model. So it can start immediately. The user can start using it the moment you get the access. We may need a couple of weeks time for integrating the local data. Otherwise, should for example, if it's US, so we have all the US data. So the US customers can start using it from day zero. So it's a very simple implementation. And of course, if it is a on-prem kind of a setting, then we have to replicate the entire application on the local cloud or local physical server that the customer might have. Should someone start using it in AWS, then it's going to be a very simple implementation. We largely leverage the AWS data security. So all AWS data secure measures will also apply for our application. And then ours is a fully validated system. So that way we have a very unique, we bring in our pharmacovigilance experience into building this kind of an tool. We spoke about some of the unique aspects. Of course, we are the first, we have an early mover advantage. We've been working with organizations like Japaigo, and now we have the WHO accreditation, which adds a feather to our cap. And again, it's a full module. Since we are capturing this, this was a secondary objective that our mobile application could also be used as a vaccine passport. We all know we are facing quite some hesitancy around. There are a lot of adverse events happening, which takes quite some time for the agencies to analyze and come back with risk minimization. There are some knee-jerk movements like holding off the vaccine, which is still increasing the hesitancy. And of course, delay to normalcy is also impacting economically to the entire world. A little bit about 3analytics as I mentioned early in the presentation. So we basically, our focus was to build on the drugs, then move on to, of course, biologics will come under the drugs as well. And then not in the same order, but these are the different aspects we wanted to cover. Our initial plan was to start off with drugs and then go to devices, biologics, combo products, cosmetics, cannabis. And vaccine was kind of very low in our priority. We just wanted to include the vaccine safety to actually complete our platform development. Of course, and unfortunately, due to COVID, right now, we kind of even slow down our drug platform activities, and we are right now working on vaccine, and that's where we are today. And of course, this is the roadmap of 3analytics, which we will eventually start working towards. You met Sushil, who is our CEO. He's been in the Valley for quite some time now. He had a recent exit in 2012, and myself, Denny had introduced. Our lead statistician is Arpit. He's based out of Kolkata. He's qualified from Indian Statistical Institute. And Dr. Takir Karim, very renowned safety physician, nephrologist by training. He's worked with FDA as well. And Dr. Anand, he's our head of engineering and AI. And Kumar, he's our head of mobile application. And there's a bunch of team. We have statisticians under Arpit. We have AI data scientists under Anand. There are some SMEs and epidemiologists reporting to me. And of course, under Sushil, there's a bunch of business folks as well. And these are some of our benefits. We have a predictive model. We kind of have a comprehensive analytics platform. Our application is very secure and trusted. Let me take a pause and answer some of the questions.
I think that our research has shown that, and we know that if we're taking that data,
we're going to find
payers,
that source
there's obviously going to be the interest in the uncertainty that Part B will hopefully answer. So,
thank you.
Sure.
All right. I have a bunch of questions queued up from the chat.
Sure.
Thank you, Janice.
Yep. Sorry about the interruption prior. I wasn't in on the model we're using today. So the first question is, how do you determine if an adverse event is actually from a vaccine or coincidental, and what needs to be reported?
So I'll take the screen back to the definition of adverse event. So it could be coincidental, but at the face of it, one has to report what their experience are. And the causality assessment would be done as part of the analytics to determine whether this was a coincidental, or this was vaccine related, or this could be due to any pre-existing disease or other condition that the patient may have. And that's why the definition is very clear, whether or not considered related and occurs in the course of use of the product in a professional practice. Of course, that is the definition of adverse event.
So let me ask a follow-up to that. How do they know that that's the case? Because most people are not going to even bother to tell someone about something that they don't think is related. You talked about communications. Is there a mechanism for ensuring that patients know that they should be discussing those things?
Yeah, we will be educating as part of the training. And this training is actually happening in many of the places where there is some knowledge about adverse events and the need for reporting any adverse experiences post-vaccination.
All right, and we have another follow-up on this in the chat, which is, how would you do the causality assessment in not so good quality of cases? And Pippa, if you need to, if you have any clarification of the type of not so good quality that you're talking about, feel free to unmute and clarify.
Yeah, sure. So the causality assessment, at least in our platform, we are not trying to do case by case. So we are doing it on an aggregated manner. So we have quantitative analysis where there are some statistical programs that has been developed, which would identify, and then there is a p-value assigned to it, which corresponds to the strength of the vaccine, strength of the adverse event to a particular vaccine. And number two, after it qualifies quantitatively, we still go ahead and do a qualitative assessment and then come to a conclusion, how many of those were related or not related. So we have built in those mechanisms, and that's where we leverage some of the artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques.
Sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting. Am I unmuted? Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't mean to scream at everyone. So moving on to the next question from the chat during the presentation is, what type of consent is currently required for the information you want to gather? And are you getting the information directly from the patient or from their providers or from both? What type of, if it's from providers, is there an interoperability element, or is it manual?
So yeah, right now we are talking to the healthcare provider. The folks in the healthcare system. So we have an interoperability arm. So we have the APIs to extract the data. So that is actually taken care. Should a country decide to use our application for their vaccine passport, we could have the customer facing application as well. So we kind of have it very flexible right now, and depending on the country's requirement, we are open to work with health system or directly to the patients as well.
So can you, when you say that you're connected, are you connected? Do you have a Smart on Fire app? How are you getting data from the provider systems?
So we are absolutely compatible with Fire HL7. And depending on the specific situation, we can do an implementation conducive to that environment. So that's not a problem.
All right. So then moving on to the next question. When more than 90 countries do not have the capacity of a good pharmacovigilance program, how are you planning to get good quality data for analysis that's kind of related? Given that even the World Health Organization's quality of data is not great, how do you do better?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that is the reason we said we have a very targeted mobile app, and this targeted questions will help us gather data. On top of it, we have Japaigo, who has been doing this for more than 40 years on the field, implementing mass vaccination program. So this mobile app, first of all, was designed with the help of Japaigo folks who have more than 20 plus years in public health, and we will leverage their expertise on the ground to get better data quality. And that is our unique proposition in comparison with the other vendors who have been shortlisted, because for two reasons. One, we are the only pharmacovigilance related company there. Number two, we are associated with world's largest public health organization.
All right. So the next question that we got is that if adverse events are not certified by a physician, mobile users can report any kind of fake data. Is there any system implemented to deal with this kind of thing, or your analytics trying to sort that out in any way?
So pharmacovigilance has something called 4 criteria. Many of them know that. So if somebody is trying to do a fake reporting, they may not cover all the 4 criteria. So many of them kind of get, they kind of become a noise and they will be left out. And on top of it, our system is not going to react for one such report. So it is going to run, the analytics runs on an aggregated manner, and they are from different sources. So even if one source is fake, the other source will not be a fake. So we have different systems, including social media, to address these kind of situations.
All right. And then actually a follow-up to your previous response. One of our attendees would like to know, what sort of targeted questionnaire do you use? There's some concern about there being inherent bias in the questionnaire that would then result in biased reporting and bias in the data.
No, there is actually no bias. We are having targeted questions which are essential for the causality assessment.
So actually you'll see that in the mobile demo, there is a very detailed questionnaire on the allergic history of the person. and other underlying conditions. And you will see that in the mobile demo in just a while. So I don't know how bias would creep in. The patient will declare, will share whatever they want to share. And based on that.
And on top of it, there is a WHO protocol to this, and we will be following the WHO protocol.
All right, there are other types of bias that are possible, recollection bias, treatment bias, etc. And also, I'm a little bit concerned by just a blanket assertion that there's no bias, because there's always some form of bias that you need. If you're not thinking about trying to get rid of bias, it will really creep in. And that is actually a major problem with analytics right now, that there are all sorts of unintended bias that comes in to sort of make the initial data sets that are being analyzed less than ideal, and that just perpetuates throughout the entire system. So I do think that this is an area that perhaps requires a little bit more thought, and
yeah,
sure,
something that you should be considering adjusting. And
as
people
we
will
go
have
along,
questions about.
Absolutely, as we go along, we'll definitely see if there are specific biases filtering in and how we can tweak our algorithm to handle or reduce or minimize, if not fully eliminate. So I totally share your concern.
All right, thank you. I didn't mean to be preachy there. I apologize.
I understand.
Those are all of the questions that we have at the moment.
So we have a raised hand from Rajesh.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
We want to answer your question. Rajesh, are you available to ask your question? All right, we'll consider it asked then and answered.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. Kumar, I think you can go ahead with your mobile app demo.
Thanks, Doctor. So let me share my mobile screen in a minute, and then now we can get moving on that. Okay, good morning, good evening to all. So as Dr. Dharani told, I would be doing a demo of the mobile app that has been developed for collecting the data for the analytics platform, which 3analytics has developed. Now, actually, the data can come from various sources. This is one of the sources. This app has been kind of developed exclusively for use by the health worker to collect the data. And on first, we are going to be onboarding the patient. So in the interest of time, I'd kind of pre-filled certain details of the person who is going to be vaccinated. So basically taking the name, the contact, we're collecting the patient's race and ethnicity. Then moving on, as we had said, we're taking a lot of details regarding the person. So we are taking collecting the details about the allergies, which can come from the drop-down list. And in addition to that, if there is anything that is not there, we can also kind of add to the list. So that way, any left-out allergies also kind of get captured. Any of the chronic or long-standing health conditions. So this is also important because the way a person behaves to the way a person behaves to the, adverse reaction can be triggered off because of certain of the conditions. Here, I'm kind of taking it as a diabetes. And since it's a lady candidate we have taken, so we are also asking whether they are pregnant at the time of vaccination, whether they are lactating. And since this has been kind of targeted on the COVID part of it, we are also asking whether this person was affected by COVID. If he's affected by COVID, what was the severity of the COVID infection? So we're kind of getting a lot more details, and any prescription for the sake of time, I'm just putting NA, and any other illness within about a month of vaccination. So that is also being kind of taken. So once this is done, we are also looking at the informed consent, whether this person has given an informed consent or not. So we are recording that. And then the detail of the personal physician who is attached to this particular patient, so that in case of any adverse reaction, the person can be contacted. So once this is submitted, it kind of pops up whether you want to enter the vaccine details. So once I choose yes, it kind of pops up with the data that we have already entered, pre-populated. All one has to do is enter the date and time of the vaccination. So I'm kind of choosing today, maybe 10 a.m. Okay. So once that is done, then it moves on to the next set of questions, which is where this vaccine was administered, because it is also very much necessary to know where the vaccine. So in this case, I say it's going to be in a pharmacy. It is at Walgreens in Cupertino. So the phone number also we take it up, so that in case of the phone number is collected so that in case of any adverse reaction localized to a particular place, the particular site can be contacted. So, and I'm just giving you a certain fictitious address, so don't be alarmed for the. So it's a detailed collection of the data regarding the vaccination. So we are collecting where it was done, how it was done, and so next comes the what vaccine was exactly administered. So we have a drop down which lists out the various vaccine. So assume that this person has been done by Moderna. So then we choose the dose number, what dose, then the lot number. This has been kind of introduced to check the genuinity of the vaccine. This is going to be having a linkage with the vaccine manufacturer to ensure. And at some point of time, we are also planning to introduce the AI so that site-specific lot numbers can be put in, so that it can be verification, so that the counterfeit vaccines are kind of found out, and then appropriate action can be taken where the vaccine was administered, how it was administered, whether it was intramuscular, subcutaneous, or intradermal, then where it was right arm or left arm. So once this is done, the entire vaccine details of the person is kind of registered. So the next step is in case that is an adverse event. I know it normally takes a while, but for the sake of demo, I'm kind of directly going to it. So we call it as a post-vaccination. Again, the kind of the data that is there comes auto-populated when a person, name of the person, what was the vaccine that was. Then we move on to what was the specific adverse event. So we have listed out. So I'm going to go for thrombocytopenia as one of the things that person has experienced. So what was the medical test that was conducted? So then is the patient still in the adverse reaction state, or has he recovered? I said yes. And what was the result? Some of them will be very mild. Some of them might require a detailed hospitalization. And if a hospitalization is done, how long he was there, where he was hospitalized. I'm just giving something. So where he was treated, so they can go back to the treating agency to find out where it was done. So it's a pretty detailed one. Next to this, sometimes, even after vaccination, the person can be affected by the COVID. So we are also collecting the data whether the person was affected by COVID and the severity of the infection. Then if this person has had an adverse for any of the previous vaccine. So in case of a person is belonging to US military or Department of Defense, so we are having a couple of questionnaires specific to them. So it's a pretty detailed one for the adverse reaction. So once this is done, this kind of gets submitted. So In short, I took you through registering of the patient, submitting of the vaccine details, and kind of doing the adverse reactions. So that is one way. In case the person comes up a little later, adverse reactions are always coming up later. It is not immediately. So we go and we choose the patient. So any of the patient we can choose from this list, or we can type it out. And then from there, we can kind of go and submit, add the adverse reaction. And similarly, the registration can be done, and then the vaccine data can be added. So it's kind of, it's not just one after another. It can be with this intervals, so that, it can be done by multiple person. While the data is being collected, the communication engine is far more important in this. So as a person registers, there is an SMS going to the person on the mobile number that is registered, saying that so-and-so has been registered. In this case, I gave Dr. Dharani or Sushil's number. So they would have got an SMS that Edwin Davis was kind of registered. So, and the vaccine data that was given was also kind of going. At the same time, there is also mail sent to the health worker. And in this case, since I'm the health worker, I have also received a couple of mails stating that so-and-so person has been vaccinated, and adverse reaction is been listening. For example, I just registered Darla Delin, so adverse event for Darlene Davis has been registered, so that I get a notification. While the person has been vaccinated, that is going to be a SMS that is going to go at pre-specified intervals, maybe once in a week or once in 3 days for a particular period of time, soliciting any adverse reaction that may have happened, so that they can contact the vaccination center or the healthcare worker to whom they are registered to kind of register the adverse reaction. So it's a proactive surveillance that we are kind of getting in, so that in case of any adverse reaction, it can be recorded into our system, and then it goes for the analytics reporting. So on one end, we have the data collection. On the other end, we have the communication engine, which goes through a multiple platform, mails, SMS, and we're integrating it with the Telegram and WhatsApp also. So now I kind of pause to take questions.
All right, we've got a whole bunch queued up. So give me 1 second.
Sure.
So a lot of these are about specific things that you showed during the demo. So one of the questions was, it seemed like there were options that you did have unknown options or not sure for some things, but it seemed like they should exist for other things. For instance, a patient may not be sure, know whether or not they have COVID. They haven't been diagnosed necessarily, but that doesn't mean they don't have it.
Okay. Taken, so we'll take care of it. And this has been done by, I think one of the questions was on the user. This particular app is for the health care worker to record all the details. So the patient is not going to actually record it.
So, okay, hang on. That, because certainly several of the questions, this comes across certainly at the beginning as a patient-facing app. But
no.
So if you're, so I thought you were getting a lot of, so like one of the other questions was, if you're getting data from providers, why are you asking patients to enter medications, especially as free-form data? But even if you're going with the provider, that's still true, because in the previous set of questions, you said that you were getting your data through interoperability, not manually. So why are you asking for this to be entered?
So if I can answer that, you see, we are looking at the whole world as our market. There are all kinds of EHR or different systems or no systems at all. So we have to be prepared for a very smooth API interoperability or low tech, no tech, even OCR, handwritten, data entry. So we have to be prepared for a range of possibilities, scenarios. That is the answer.
So why still use free-form data, even if you need entrance? Like, it seems like free-form data is asking for trouble because you won't have, it makes it much harder to use the data later.
Well, I don't know how to answer that. Basically,
what is, can you explain what is the free-form data?
Well, for instance, when you asked people to enter their medication, it was just an open text box.
People are not entering, the healthcare workers entering.
No, no.
So
If it
even
has
with
to
the
be
healthcare.
patient, yeah. No, I get the question. If it has to be patients, in this app, they can the option of free flow is because they can enter to the extent of the knowledge that they have. The coding part of it will be done in the backend and pushed into the analytics. And there is a question about coding, and we use Medra coding for adverse events, medical history, pre-existing conditions, and we use drug dictionary for concomitant medications and of course vaccine suspect drugs. We use coding at the drug dictionary, WHO drug dictionary at the back end. So right now we have kept it kind of open and flexible. Depending on the country, the customer, we may have the workflow also customized to them. Should it be a very sophisticated health system that we are working, then all the interoperability and all the data flow will be API driven. Should we go to, because with Japaigo, we are working with low income and middle income countries, wherein we've even, in fact, in our WHO conversation, the challenging question that we had that how will you implement it? How will you gather data? So the question there comes as low tech or no tech, and that is where it is about how we actually implement the system, the active surveillance, and then we capture data. So that is where we also have an offline version where we can upload the data offline and then migrate it to our database.
Doesn't analytics, getting good results from analytics requires having very good starting data that's in a consistent, structured format that's understandable by a machine. So I understand what you're saying, but
there is a layer. If you recall, the architecture that I showed, there is actually a layer of data harmonization, data cleaning, which is driven by our machine learning algorithm. So after that is the layer of analytics. So we are not running analytics on the raw data. So there is a layer of harmonization, and on top of it is where the analytics.
Machine learning itself it requires that type of thing. But okay, let's move on. There are some other questions that are not related to this topic. One of them was, how do you measure severity? Is there a set scale that you're using?
No, we will use a scale. This is kind of post-approval. So it's kind of a mild, moderate, severe. If it was a clinical trial, we can use CTCAE grade. But again, we will think about it. That's a good point.
All right. And then there's another point, and I guess this is a slightly different question than as written. So the original question was, why aren't you telling people exactly what they're consenting to when you ask for consent? But if this app is actually meant for the provider, then why are you asking the provider for consent for patient data and not the patient?
No.
So answer that from either direction.
Yeah, I get it. So right now, the consent form, again, consent here has two applications. One, the consent for data, and consent for vaccination. So here, the consent, the digital consent that what we have built is for vaccination, because the consent for data comes from the provider.
So, but you said that app was for the provider and not the patient. So I guess that part's a little bit confusing.
No, so here the consent is for vaccination. We are explaining the risks of vaccination, and then we are uh, obtaining the consent for vaccination. If it has to be from the, and of course the consent should be from the patient.
Okay, so basically the provider is indicating that the patient gave consent.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. That's an interesting model. Let's move on to let's go back. We have a follow-up question to our previous discussion about the analytics and machine learning. Someone would like to know, I assume they mean which machine learning algorithms you're using in order to do this processing.
We will show you right now. We are going to go into
All right, so we'll hold that for the next section then.
Yeah, there are some proprietary which we cannot, we may not be able to disclose it right now.
But you'll see it. You'll see it in action right now.
All right. So another question that we got is there was a question about what this app provides. There are a bunch of already existing applications that are run either by different authorities. How does this app enhance the information collection that's already available?
Yeah. So to the extent of our knowledge, there are apps that do pieces of what we do, like registration, and then some have some and collect vaccination details, and some differently as like VSafe, which collect only the adverse events. So we are kind of putting this together. Probably this may not be an application for a country which already has some infrastructure in data collection. But again, as Sushil mentioned, and also as Danny mentioned, this is for the whole world. We are looking at countries which do not have any infrastructure at all. And of course, sophisticated countries like US as well. So our customer base is so huge. So we have kept certain things consciously a little fluid, and we will customize it as we go on for implementation.
And even in the advanced countries, we have spoken to more than 20 countries so far. Most of them have some kind of app or the other. And we have not come across any app till now which is focused on understanding and capturing details from the adverse event perspective, allergic history, and a bunch of other factors that you saw in our mobile app. So I think most of them are a subset of our app. And again, a country has option to use or not to use our app. That is not the real deal. The real deal is the analytics. We'll see it now, right? We'll go into that.
Okay, maybe one thing that would be a little bit helpful as shown by this question set and some of the misunderstandings. Can you maybe take 2 minutes before you go on to the next section that you were planning, just to overview exactly who you see using this and exactly like which, is it solely providers? Is it the authorities? Is it patients? And what components of your system get used by each? I think that would clarify and help prevent future questions.
Absolutely. I would love to address that. So there are two broad categories: public sector, government health agencies, and then there is a private sector, payer, provider, and all kinds of people who are doing something in the vaccination, campaign, the value chain, right? So for the government agencies or regulators, there are areas in terms of understanding adverse events as soon as possible. That is the element of active surveillance or near real-time analytics, understanding causality and doing something about it as soon as possible, as opposed to waiting for traditional passive pharmacovigilance, which can take weeks or months. And because of the numbers involved, the consequences could be pretty bad, right? So that is from their perspective. From the payers, providers, and all those folks, they want to prepare themselves ahead of time if they have enough resources, or if they need to plan more resources to tackle any hospitalization or severe cases. So basically, our value proposition extends both these large buckets, public sector and private sector.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we're kind of exploring, because as we all know, this is a very unique situation that a treatment or a vaccination is required for the entire global community. And in fact, many countries, they themselves are figuring out their ways, and we are also figuring out our way while we have started talking to many of the countries, and so far we have spoken to 20 countries. So so that's where we are actually.
Okay, great. I think that's it for now. So go ahead and go on with your planned presentation.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. So this is our analytics platform. What we have today is version 1. So we still continue to improve, and as we all know, machine learning is kind of something that machine learning and AI keeps on improvising every day, and we still to add many features, many data sources, and so on and so forth. So in the drop down, you can see we have already lined up some of the data sources. Where's the FDA data? Again, all these are publicly available data. EMA is the data from the Europe. We have some Twitter data, and then we have the capability to integrate the mobile app data into this platform. We have epidemiology data, and of course, we're going to have some genomics data, which will be helpful in predictive as well as for the causality assessment. So this is the landing page of the VAERS data. So far, approximately 276 million people across different states have been vaccinated across the US. We have close to 150,000 adverse events reported. There have been some deaths reported as well. Here we could see some of the common adverse events, nothing alarming. We know there have been some general symptoms, chills, arthralgia, injection site reactions. So we also have some signals based on the quantitative analytics that we have run. Of course, there could be some of them as AESI, some of them are expected. We have a kind of a do-it-yourself feature where you can adjust the p-value. Right now, and you adjust it, there will be a dynamic shift in the graphics that we have built. So we kind of have it at 0.05, and then yeah, you could, and it kind of adjusts. We also have given additional methods. The customer could choose whatever they want, and our platform also kind of identifies some of the niche signals that have been reported. So this is a whole set of data, and this is kind of the filtered signals based on all the unexpected events. So it's kind of a very easy to use application. And there is also a color coding here. So one can also compare if a country is using 2 vaccines, then they can compare between the 2 vaccines that they are using. Likewise, we have built it for all the different vaccines. Then there is some qualitative analytics that we have built, which can kind of slice and dice the data based on the seriousness, the month-wise data, the vaccine manufacturer data, and also some of the death, hospitalization, life-threatening kind of events. So we kind of have the that kind of a slicing here, and about death, we have We have some charts built on the death data, depending on the age and the manufacturer. And again, outcome related data. So this is something that we have as well. So based on our quantitative analytics, we have also built some causality analysis. So our algorithm will run and come up with the assessment. How many of them are possible, probable, related, which is not related or related. And then there is in age group in which the adverse event is occurring predominantly, in which gender, and then what some of the data from the analysis, which kind of helps to make a causality assessment in terms of validating the signal. We are in the process of developing a risk assessment algorithms as well, which will probably be in version 2 or version 3. A similar kind of process we have built on the EMA data. And when we go to EMA, since AstraZeneca is available there, we have AstraZeneca data as well. So one of the signals that we have identified, or our algorithm has identified, is acute kidney injury, which is an AE, adverse events of special interest in patients who are receiving AstraZeneca. And then cranial nerve disorders, especially facial nerve paralysis, Bell's palsy. So that is something that's a signal that has been identified in terms of patients receiving AstraZeneca vaccine. There are cerebrovascular accidents, which we all know there have been quite a few events of thrombosis and thromboembolic events. So one can kind of navigate through, and these potential signals will kind of, depending on the workflow, which we would customize at the time of implementation, would be set as a trigger or a flag. And this information, it will not only send the potential signal trigger, but it will also, along with the trigger signal, it will also send the data with the causality analytics, and in the future, even the risk assessment as a full report to the concerning agency or the authority who in the entire chain. So similarly, we have for all the different vaccines that are available. So this is something that we built from the EMA data. In terms of social media, again, we have kind of analyzed 2.3 million tweets. There are some overall sentiments, and you could see that 32% have been positive towards vaccination. The rest, 2/3, predominantly neutral, and then kind of negative. This has been some of the terms that we grouped about what is the kind of discussions that are happening in the social media. And then we try to slice and dice the data for each vaccine type. So these are kind of something that is very similar to the data that we have, except there are some rare tweets, and these are rare cases that our social media analytics is also picking up. You can see for Moderna, there are some tweets about thrombocytopenia, and I just want to stop. And this is for Pfizer. We saw a couple of cases of brain hemorrhage. So one can see these rare cases, then they can go back and look at what is the data in these patients. And when we looked at the data, we had to kind of adjust the p-value because it did not show up in 0.5. So we had to increase it to 1, and then you can see there's going to be it's kind of a noise, but we were still able to find out that there are cases being reported for cases of brain hemorrhage being reported for these vaccine. So you can see a bunch of basal ganglia, hematomas, infarction, basilarity artery, occlusion, embolism. But again, the p-value is not significant here. However, these could be taken as one instance of serious unexpected event, and this could even our social media platform could help to be a source of adverse event or source of signal. And then we have the mobile app coming in. Once the mobile app data comes in, it also has this algorithms of identifying signal, whether it is an unexpected event or even the data in near, that's why we claim that near real time. Once they come through that near real time, the algorithms will start picking up signals and which will also trigger some signals. So the reason why we are again claiming to be near real time is as we are speaking to 20 countries, say if we are implemented it in 10 countries, then you can imagine in a given day how many millions of records are going to flow in. And again, we have epidemiology data here. So for a decision maker, they could compare with the epidemiology data if they want to go with, say, check the incidence of atrial fibrillation. They could actually here we go. And depending on the country, they could get the epidemiology data to make their decision. And of course, as I said, we'll be getting the genomics data, and this will keep improving. And any feedbacks, we are open to take it, as this is very helpful for us as we keep developing our platform and advancing our analytics. Let's open the floor for questions.
All right, we've got a bunch of them wrapped up. There's actually one follow-up question from the previous segment that came in right at the beginning, and it's actually generally applicable. What is your goal? What do you intend to get out of the application at the end of the day?
Well, we want to reduce the vaccine hesitancy. We would like more and more people to come forward and get fully vaccinated. Our motto is vaccinate with confidence, thereby bringing normalcy to different countries and the world at large, which will directly impact not only the health and well-being, but also the economic conditions of billions of people around the world. And that is the ultimate goal. And save lives along the way, as many as we can, and reduce the pain and suffering due to adverse events, which are technically speaking preventable if the right data and the right algorithms are applied at the right time.
All right. So next, there was a question about evaluating multiple factors at once. For instance, looking at multiple comorbidities, such as if someone has both diabetes and asthma. And then sort of as part of that, how do you differentiate patients who have just one comorbidity versus those in more than one if you're looking at only one factor? So for instance, if you're looking at that slide that you showed where you were looking at diabetics, if there's an incidence of diabetics being meaningful, how do you know that the subset that it's all diabetics that are meaningful and not the subset of diabetics who also have high blood pressure?
So we are actually developing multiple cohorts, as I mentioned. So we will be developing cohorts like, for example, as you said, diabetic. Okay, 60 years male diabetic. That just alone will be a cohort, and then you can add the ethnicity or the race, and then that will be another cohort. Then you want to add diabetic with somebody taking metformin. Then that will be a cohort. So our goal is to kind of develop that kind of a dynamic interactive dashboard where they can keep adding or building their own cohorts, because at the back end, we would have already developed those kind of a cohort data and analytics on top of it. So on the fly, you can depending on who the patient is, for somebody, a patient, or even if the doctor wants to administer, of course, this is something that we have it in the roadmap, not only for vaccine, but also for the drug. Of course, right now we will validate it with the drugs. If he wants to check, okay, why these patients are getting atrial fibrillation, why they are getting brain hemorrhage, right? Probably we saw it in Pfizer. We did not see it in Moderna or AstraZeneca. Somebody has a pre-existing atrial fibrillation. The physician could decide plugging in all the factors, which gives them the cohort, and you will kind of know, okay, in 60% who had pre-existing atrial fibrillation, had worsening of atrial fibrillation in when they received Pfizer, but it did not worsen when they received AstraZeneca. Probably for them, AstraZeneca could be a better vaccine. So that is where we bring in the cohort analytics, where you can add on features. And somebody might have a cancer. Somebody might have diabetes, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, pre-existing ischemic heart disease, vascular disease. So they can keep on adding those, not only pre-existing, but also the group of drugs that they are taking or the class of drugs they are taking. And the cohort could be even more complicated, but the outcome will be a very simple answer, which is what is a better drug or a better vaccine in this scenario for those type of patients.
So there's actually two separate follow-ups that go in different directions that are related to what you just said. So I'm going to ask the first one and then we'll go off in the other direction. Sure. So are you trying to say that an individual physician who's looking at data will decide that a diabetic patient on metformin should not be given Pfizer based on this? That seems like a lot to ask an individual provider to do.
This cohort analytics will kind of give them an idea to their choice of vaccination.
All right, and then going off in the other direction, you actually mentioned your Pfizer and brain hemorrhage data. There was a question at that point of the presentation about, and again, it's kind of all related to what you're talking about, but how you know that actually is related to Pfizer and not due to some other issue that's going on with those patients who just happen to get Pfizer and not Moderna.
Correct.
Or AstraZeneca or whatever.
So our algorithm basically functions using these 4 criteria: patient, reporter, vaccine that they take, and then the adverse event. Of course, there is always a chance for somebody faking their adverse event, but that's just an indicator or a trigger. When we went to the quantitative analytics, we saw that the threshold did not meet. In fact, the strength of the signal was very weak because these events, you cannot completely ignore that event, but at the same time, you don't have to kind of jump onto an action immediately. So that is we would like to use it at that context. So we are not going to make a decision, or of course not recommend a decision. So there was a tweet about brain hemorrhage, or I mean, a lot of tweets about somebody even said, oh, I took a vaccine and I died. I mean, somebody died, right? So we're not going to react for those kind of tweets. We take that as one of, because the data sometimes, if that's, we run a causality analytics, and if brain hemorrhage or seems to be a risk, a true risk, right? We are not ignoring the fact this platform will help the health system or the agency to take action much earlier, because even a day delay, 1 day delay is a huge impact in terms of vaccination, because already millions of patients would have already got vaccinated. And we saw that in AstraZeneca. When did the clots, the thromboembolic events started surfing? And when did the countries started taking action? Luckily in Janssen, US reacted very fast, but for AstraZeneca, it took so much time. And all through that time, people were being vaccinated. So those kind of risks are what we are trying to avoid in this scenario. And we are trying to build all the tools, all the data sources available where we could find those early signals, use the corpus of data that is available publicly. And tomorrow, as we start implementing in many countries, we will have quite a bit of local data reported by physicians, reported by patients, reported by health system, which will be used for validity, and the committees can take quick decisions.
So the best way to characterize our platform today is to use this as an early warning system, both in terms of the specific adverse events and also in terms of the time element. So as soon as possible, whatever data through the algorithm that you can look at and potentially analyze, assess, and either refute or accept, right? So that decision is always yours.
All right. So let me continue with some of the other questions that we've gotten. So let's actually move to social media. There are a couple of questions around that. One question was, what social media platforms are you using in your evaluation, and how do you account for whether they allow hidden posts or are all public? And do you consider whether you're seeing all of the data or not?
We are right now only using Twitter. That's being recognized by FDA and other agencies. We are not considering any other social media for now.
All right. And a question came in that asking how you are matching the social media data to healthcare data.
Healthcare data? No, we are not considering any healthcare data here. Social data, we kind of validate it with the adverse event data that we have in the platform.
Well, so now that's kind of an interesting response, because a lot of what you were, most of what you were showing through the analytics system was actually very tightly tied to healthcare data, such as whether someone has diabetes or this stuff like that. So if you don't have that data, then perhaps it was a little bit confusing. How are you actually using the social media data?
Okay, let me clarify. So healthcare data are pharmacovigilance data. They are kind of, what to say, some of the data fields are definitely the patient related data. So you can largely call them as healthcare data, but we kind of very specify them as pharmacovigilance data, which is the data that is necessary or essential for making a causality analytics. So there could be other data in the healthcare system, right, which may not be of interest for our algorithms. That is all we are trying to say.
All right. So let me then move on to the next questions, which kind of ties something you were saying here to something you said earlier. You mentioned that you capture race and ethnicity data, but also that your goal is to be worldwide. Doesn't much of the world make collecting this data illegal?
I don't know if I can answer that question. We obviously will follow the norms, the local laws, privacy, safety of each country, and the data of each country stays with them. We don't, disclose that or share it publicly. Whatever is available from VAERS or EMA or Twitter is what we are using. So I don't know if I answered
your. Of course, you can see, right? I mean, there are 276 million patients people have been vaccinated, and the data available is just 150,000. So we have to try and find the risks within that, because it's just a replication of the rest of the 276 million. We don't have to have all the imagine if we have to have those 100% of patients being reported. We'll be flooded with data. I think AWS will burst out in just one day. So it is just we all need is a dipstick, because clinical trial is even a smaller size. What we have is a good amount of data, and that is where the algorithms are trained, and that is how they work to identify signals. And you can see a bunch of signals that the algorithms have already been identified. And those are not reported in the clinical trials. More interesting, right?
Yeah, for example, facial paralysis, one of the signals we captured through our system, and eventually it got reported in the media much later, as an example.
All right. So hang on. Having a minor technical difficulty. Okay, nope. Let me ask the next question. Do you think that the reporting rate of spontaneous adverse events can be considered as a true incidence rate, considering lots of well-known biases of spontaneous reporting?
Yeah. So you could have looked at it in our platform. In none of the analytics, in none of the place we kind of talk about the reporting rate, because here our philosophy and the objective here is early risk prediction, early signal detection.
Exactly.
So it could be even just one instance, and as we showed in the Twitter, even one case of thrombocytopenia which is not reported, or a brain hemorrhage, which if people are waiting for, again, we personally think reporting rate is not a good measure. Of course, for vaccines, there is going to be, with all these adverse events out there, this is definitely going to be a positive benefit risk ratio. The reason being, COVID is killing patients. There is no treatment for COVID, and whatever adverse events are reported, we still wanted to encourage people to get vaccinated, but at the same time be aware of what could be the adverse events, and give them the confidence that there is a system, there is some technology, the tools that are available, which will help you so vaccinate with confidence. So that
exactly.
is the kind of message that we wanted to give. So we are not worried about whether it could be 0.0001% or it could be even 10%. So that is not going to impact us. I mean, this incidence rate kind of, either it gives a false sense to the people, stating that, oh, the incidence rate is very low. But is that the incidence rate? We could see 276 million people received in US, 149,000 adverse events only. So how is that incidence rate a true incidence rate? So we strongly believe it's the signals or the risks that is very important, rather than the incidence rate.
So this is sort of going back to something we previously discussed a little bit, but we had a question about how do you deal with the fact that patients don't typically return to a healthcare professional if they get minor to moderate adverse events from a vaccination. You said most of this is aimed at the provider. I do realize you're doing some social media looking, but direct outreach to all is not possible practically, and you're not focused on the patients anyway. So how do you deal with that?
So minor to moderate, we are not concerned, because that is not going to that's not going to flare up the hesitancy. What is going to flare up the hesitancy are the rare adverse events and the serious adverse events. So the system has to be active, proactive in identifying those rare incidences. Even one has to be reported in any nook and corner of the world. So that is what is more important. So mild and moderate, I mean, almost 100% of the patients, close to 100% of the patients at least have fever, any injection site reaction, or fatigue, something or the other. And some of them have even severe reactions. But these are certain things which are expected. But these rare adverse events like the hemorrhagic events, myocardial infarction, thromboembolic events, severe thrombocytopenia, wherein they will definitely be hospitalized, or they seek the healthcare professional assistance, and they gets reported. And not all those incidences or all those instances are reported, but even all we want is just one report anywhere. Either somebody tweets or somebody reports to VAERS or EMA, we're going to pick it up. So that is the message that we wanted to pass.
All right. And the last question, unless something new comes in, is what kind of causality scale do you use?
So that's kind of a secret. But of course, they're very well known in the pharmacovigilance industry. We kind of use Naranjo. We are building something on Bradford criteria. So yeah, those are some of the things that we follow right now. And once we master our basic algorithms on Naranjo and Bradford, we can swing around other analytics as well, other causality metrics, the French imputability or the WHO scale. So yeah, that is where we are heading towards.
Actually, one more question before we go back to the presentation proper. Do you currently tie into any of the existing adverse events reporting systems?
Sorry, come again?
Do you currently tie into any of the existing adverse event reporting systems that are set up by various governments or?
Yeah, we have the VAERS by US. EMA does not have a separate vaccine data, but from the EMA pool of data, we extract the vaccine adverse events data.
All right, and then there's something else. How do you overcome the Twitter API limitation regarding data capture, the fact that they only allow 15 API calls every 15 minutes?
Yeah, it was for me because, we did on the past, especially on Twitter, we did some as well analytics, and the hardest thing is the limitation on the data they allow you to just to farm. So how you overcome, or have you go, and especially on the medical side of data, so how you overcome this limitation?
So the Twitter API has multiple, I would say, programs or subscriptions. So depending on the country requirement, we can scale the subscription to kind of get the data. And we have our head of engineering and AI, Anand, who would like to answer this question.
Yeah, that you're right, Dr. Dharani. So we got multiple plans under Twitter, and depending upon our usage, we can see that what kind of the signals we are getting and what kind of tweets we are those referring the adverse event, and accordingly we can scale up. We are not seen so far as a limitation.
Yeah, they really strict on that. So how many calls. For example, are you actually doing with your subscription? Because we have a lot of issue regarding that, they're not open to share the data, obviously, and easily, and even on the medical part. So just even for my knowledge, so how much do you get from the subscription you currently have now?
The data is open, Mr. Pedro. The data is open, which is mentioned by Twitter. Even we can collaborate. We can help you saying that now, in case if you're facing some issues, we can share our knowledge because it's a common data. Like, how do we make use of Twitter information for a public benefit? So we are, it's going good for us. And then in case of any support, we can collaborate and work on it.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we have extracted 2.3 million tweets, and then we kind of broke it down. Our data scientists broke it down for different vaccines, and from there we also went one level deeper to identify what the rare adverse events are. So it's working fine for us. Definitely, we'll be happy to share our experience should you be facing any challenges.
All right, and we have one more question, and then we'll let you go back to the presentation, and that is, how are you going to separate potential and identified signals?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question. Thank you for bringing it up. So earlier, we kind of bring in our pharma experience, industry experience. So we wanted to have some gates. We wanted to have the signal detection, and then some validation, and then risk assessment, and then the potential risk or identified risk. But again, now in the vaccine world, when we are working with countries with little infrastructure, the requirements that we have on hand in terms of from Jepaigo is that they kind of want a full automation. So at least our end goal is to have a potential signal, and then a risk assessment. And in the risk assessment, it will be either a potential risk or an identified risk, or the risk is refuted. So that is where we are crunching our data scientists. We are building algorithms on that. So we will definitely come back once we have that algorithm and share it with the world.
That's it for now. Go ahead and continue with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. It was interesting questions, and thank you for the opportunity. And there are some good feedbacks that we will definitely incorporate, and that is one of our objectives of this session. We really thank you all for
right. Absolutely.
Thank you
for your time. Yes, and questions.
questions.
Any more questions? We will be happy to answer. Anybody?
Or you can reach out through our email.
Perhaps we can, in a moment, we can show your contact information again, if you would share that with us. We're also going to take a poll now while we have the opportunity for people to complete. So those of you who are online and can see the poll, we would ask that you start voting and tell us your thoughts and your impressions. I can see the votes coming in, which is always great. We have 60 people who are in a position to vote and aren't driving down the freeway with their phone on their ear. So we don't want anyone to vote if they're in those circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give this 15 more seconds. All right, people are getting in at the last minute. A number of folks coming in under the wire. I feel like I'm calling a race horse race or something here. I don't want to stop people from submitting their polling questions. So we are going to stop the poll now. I'm going to end the poll.
Okay.
Very good. I want to thank Dr. Durrani, Sushil, Kumar, all of you for joining us today. This is an extraordinarily complicated problem, and we respect the expertise that was demonstrated not only by yourselves, but also by a number of folks who are attending in our audience today. And one of the lessons that I drew from today's discussion is you have a world of hurt, and it's difficult to approach that where every country has its own way of dealing with crises like this, their own ways of engaging the citizens of their country, their own technological capacities, and you're gathering information for all of them. And I think what you are providing is of immense value, and it's up to us as countries to get our act together around interoperability so that we don't have to make it so hard on organizations like yours to collect data and to share data. But I think what you've done today is an excellent, excellent discussion. And I thank you on behalf of MHDC, our members, and our community. Just briefly, we will have a copy of the presentation and a copy of this webinar on our website in about 48 to 72 hours. So before the end of this week, you will be able to access both the recording and the presentation. And I again want to thank our colleagues from 3analytics. I wish you the best, the best with what you're doing. This is an enormous global problem, and having insights, however they may run against the standards that we're all accustomed to in our own countries, requires a truly global view. And it is clear that that's what you're taking. And we appreciate that. And if we have no further questions with that, we'll thank you again and we'll adjourn the meeting. Take care.
Thank you, Denny.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Denny, Arlene, Lynn. Thank you so much to MHDC. We really appreciate this opportunity.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you.
Everyone stay well.